how do the Buffalo Bills look for fantasy football here in 2024? Welcome back to the ADP Average Dudes podcast. I'm your average dude, Matt Mormon. And unfortunately, due to scheduling and whatnot, I'm not going to be able to do the full projections for every team. I was starting to go into those. You can check out my Arizona, my Atlanta ones right here on the channel already. But we're just going to kind of give full team overviews moving forward for all the teams here this summer. So we're going to continue to kind of go in roughly alphabetical order. I think I actually skipped a couple teams for this one because I want to talk about some Buffalo Bills here on this morning. So let's talk about the Bills. And obviously with the Bills, I think the big thing you got to talk about, first of all, is Josh Allen. I'm actually a little bit lower on Josh Allen than everybody else seems to be. A lot of them have him as QB1 going into this upcoming season, and he was QB1 last year. I've got him as my QB4. I'm a little bit worried about this offense. We're going to talk about those weapons here in just a second, and that's a lot of it for me. I think his 15 rushing touchdowns is going to regress a little bit. I don't think it's going to be supplemented by the passing touchdowns we've seen in the past. I'm really afraid that's just not going to be that. I think you look at the Chiefs in 2023, and that's almost a model a little bit for what I'm expecting out of the Bills. Again, the rushing for Josh Allen will be there to an extent, so maybe he has a better floor than Mahomes had last year, but I think that's kind of the template here. I don't think it's going to be a big, explosive, high-flying offense we've seen before. I think they're going to try to run the football, and they're going to try to maybe bring in that A-dot a little bit from Josh Allen, really rein this offense in. And I don't think that's a good thing for fantasy at all. So I've got him on my QB4. He's one of my biggest concerns going into this season. That doesn't feel good to say about Josh Allen, a guy who's been so good for us for many years now at quarterback for the Bills and quarterback for your fantasy teams. I'm just very worried about that, and it really does go from the weapons. So Keon Coleman, let's talk about him first. Lower my phone. So Keon Coleman, let's talk about him first here. The wide receiver, second round pick for the Buffalo Bills. I was very much wishy-washy on Coleman throughout the draft process. One day, I watched a piece of film and I go, wow, look at this big, strong, fast wide receiver. And the next day, I watch a different piece of film and he's like dropping easy balls and running sloppy routes. And then I'm watching the combine and it's like, oh my gosh, this guy runs like a tight end. And then I watch him do the gauntlet and I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy runs like Puka Nacua. What is this man? I don't know. And that's one of my big concerns. If Keon Coleman is that dude, then hey, things can work out great for the Bills this season. If he's that dude though, if he is this year's Quentin Johnston, if you will, I think there's no fallback options for this team. You know, using Quentin Johnston as kind of the comparison there, you still had a Keenan Allen. You still had some offense here. You don't have much else here in Buffalo. I think Curtis Samuel is a fun little piece. He's got history with the coaching staff. He's got history with the GM, I believe. He's always kind of been that guy who's been a fun trinket but never put it all together. He's 27 now, so you know he still is in prime years. He's not over the hill, but he's been around for a long time. We've seen glimpses of it. It's been a while though. I think he's not a bad sleeper to take. In Fantasy Pros ECR, he's wide receiver 56 right now. ADP 51, so you can get him pretty late if you want to take that shot on Curtis Samuel. I don't blame you. I'm just very worried about what that means for the offense as a whole if Curtis Samuel ends up being your best option. Now, the fun breakout that everybody's kind of calling is Khalil Shakir, and I've been on that train as well at times. I think the more I watch Khalil Shakir, I say, okay, maybe he's just me Gabe Davis. And sometimes that means big touchdowns, sometimes that means lots of cardio with no fantasy points. And that's what I think you're going to get from him. I don't think it's going to be all that much. I don't expect this big breakout season from him. I think if he hits on enough of those big games, then he's going to be a guy you want to just slot in your flex and hope it hits. And if enough of those big games don't hit, then I think he's just waiver wire fodder that somebody picks up in a desperation pinch. We've all been there before, where you're just picking up a wide receiver who runs deep routes and hoping he catches a touchdown that week. Ironically, Marquez Valdes-Scantling is on this roster, a guy who I've done that with before, I know for sure. I'm afraid that those are the two outcomes for Khalil Shakir. We'll see which one plays out. I'm a bit more down on him as well. I think in my best ball drafts, I've not drafted a single one of these guys at wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills yet this summer. Now, a guy who I have drafted a lot of, and a guy who I was kind of low on until my buddy Tanner Ward the other day really kind of talked me into it a little bit, and that's James Cook. James Cook last year, was his last handful of weeks of the season, once the offensive coordinator change took over, he really exploded on this season, became a massive workhorse running back for this team. I kind of think that might continue. I know I'm a little worried about his size and his ability to stay hold up to it. Quite frankly, I think he can be an RB1. I've got him as my RB10 this season, right ahead of Ken Walker and Isaiah Pacheco, just behind Kyron Williams and Josh Jacobs. So for me, I think that he's a guy who is going later than he should. I think that a lot of the drafts I see is going at like RB 14, 15, 16 in like round 4 sometimes in those underdog best ball drafts, which those are 3 wide receivers. So wide receivers get pushed up in those. So in our regular redraft leagues, I don't think it'll be quite that crazy, but it could be. And if it does, I think he's a great value. I think he's a guy who can really return on that investment. I do worry about his pass catching though, because Josh Allen not much of a passer to running back. So I'm just a little worried about the role in that regard. So I made you wait for it a little bit here. Now let's talk a little bit Dalton Kincaid, my tight end 5 this upcoming season. I've got him behind Mark Andrews, behind Laporta, Kelsey, and McBride. I've got him my tight end 5. ADP has him as their tight end 5 as well. ECR has him down at 7, which is interesting. The skills were there, right? And last year I was very much down on Laporta. It was his rookie year. I figured Dawson Knox would play a lot, and he did. That kind of all came to fruition. Knox got hurt. Kincaid played pretty well. Not blew the roof off the doors well, though. He just played pretty good. He didn't go totally crazy. But good enough to where I think you can be encouraged by what you can get out of this year. The hope is that the offense runs through him, right? I talked about those wide receivers being shaky and this kind of emulating the Chiefs. The hope is that this offense emulates the Chiefs and that Dalton Kincaid is a target hog. If he is, then I think his PPR value skyrockets because those catches could just come in bunches for him. So there is that possibility out there for sure for Dalton Kincaid. I think there's also a possibility that this offense just doesn't move the ball very well and touchdowns go to Josh Allen's legs, or James Cook, finally scored some touchdowns. I think he's going to score more than 2 finally, I would imagine. And so then Dalton Kincaid kind of gets lost in the middle. So for the Bills, I do think it's very important to look at kind of their late season numbers because that was when they had the offensive coordinator change. This whole new offense came into play for them. And Kincaid's numbers weren't very good for most of that time, but in the last 2 weeks he was very good, being tight end 7 and then tight end 2 in weeks 17 and 18. So the upside's definitely still there for Dalton Kincaid. He's probably my favorite Buffalo, no, James Cook. James Cook is my favorite Buffalo Bills player to draft. Kincaid probably next. I never get any Josh Allen because I do prefer Lamar Jackson, and Lamar goes late enough after Allen to where I can just wait and take Lamar every time. I've gotten a little bit of Kincaid, I think 1 or 2 shares. I've gotten quite a bit of James Cook. Like I said, I don't think I've taken a single one of these wide receivers. Maybe one Keon Coleman over the course of my my summer of best ball drafts. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now with the Buffalo Bills. There'll be more stuff to come, I'm sure, in this regard, but until then, we will see you guys next time. We'll have more and more of these team previews.